Welcome to From the Left with Stephen Leon. Today, we're going to talk about a few things. It's been a busy week for me. I'm running for Virginia's House of Representatives here in the 8th District. Like I said, busy week. I was able to finally get out there at this Arlington County Civic Federation candidate forum. That was nice. I got to see the candidates. I was lucky to even have a couple minutes to speak. They cut me short 30 seconds. But I want to put the blast on this guy named Erwin Rogard. So I also went on another live stream earlier this week. It was this woman, Kelly Lane, had hit me up, and the name of her program is Candidates for Assange. So recently he made a plea deal with a lot of different complexities with international and everything like that. He has a history of hacking. I got on that show, and that was one of the first things I said, just to put it out there, because I know how people can get. You know what I mean? If you go on and just see something, anything that's controversial like that, just like I don't support hacking. And then after the show, she was like, he wasn't guilty for hacking. And I was like, well, I get that. There's plea bargains and there's things, all the different stuff. I get it. And the most recent article, it will explain. You can go to just Google it, and you'll see a DOJ article that was published in June. AP is a good source, all that stuff. He's a free man because of the plea deal. So, what happened was this guy, Erwin Rogard, saw that, immediately thought that I was supporting everything about Assange. The thing about that is that Assange was, he obtained documents that were obtained legally, and then illegally, and then he published them. So that was a crime, right? So anyways, this person, Erwin Rogard, just got on there, didn't do all their homework, probably didn't even see the whole interview or that I did with some of the other candidates there at the Candidates for Assange live stream. That was the only live stream I've ever done over there. And just immediately this guy thought that I was all about it. And then he sent a bunch of emails with weird attachments and links in them. And I think one of them had something to do with someone at the DOJ. And I was like, oh gosh, you know what I mean? And then I just, that's the kind of stuff that you deal with being a part of this. People take something that you have said and they take it out of context if you've said it once or whatever. The guy didn't necessarily ask any questions per se. Like he just immediately thought that I was a part, like her sidekick, or that I'm okay with hacking the government, and then having those documents published. I'm not. And and you probably would have gotten that if you had paid attention from the beginning. And this guy, just whatever his bias is for that, and he thought that someone that's running for the House to be, oh man, I mean, I'm grateful that I was on the show and I was able to kind of put my 2 cents there with media literacy. And he just completely got the opposite of what's reality there. So I just want to go ahead and call him out for that. He wants to go and try and he included someone else in the conversation that called me a defendant, and just the way that you make it look, and who knows, maybe the email address was from Columbia University, so I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't know if it's hackers or I don't know. You never know. You know what I mean? I don't open suspicious links and PDFs from people I don't know, even if it's at a alumni Columbia email address. And it goes on what I've been saying before about instant judgment. I had this other story where so part of my long-term foreign policy, where it's more space commerce related, where asteroid 16 Psyche, this is a very rich metal asteroid. And I think we're talking about iron worth up to 19 zeros. We're not going to bring that stuff back here, obviously. We're going to hopefully be able to start space infrastructure with that kind of stuff, with new technologies. I mean, this is down the road where this could be, depending on how quickly we can come together internationally about stuff. And that's the thing about it, is that, and I think we all realized that when Kennedy was president, when we went to the moon, how the whole world came together or something like that. Even that movie Independence Day, just how do we connect internationally? How do we resolve things? And it's common goals. If that's exploring the final frontiers in space, or if it's climate change and poverty, and essentially what are in the World Bank's mission statements to come together with that stuff. But as far as space faring and commerce goes, the word that I used on my website to describe that is extraterrestrial. That's what a terrestrial, if you look at the definition. Some wannabe journalist out there thought that I meant that I was going to space trade with aliens. Like that word itself, extraterrestrial, is exclusively owned and interpreted by E.T., the movie with Drew Barrymore in the 80s. You know what I mean? It's like, wow, you can't even use a certain word. It's some people. I'm not saying everybody thinks this way, but the fact that you put that out there, if you put that out there and people start believing it, and then it gave me a nickname from this other woman that's here pretty common on social media named Sharon Berry, called me Space Trader. And whenever she's stuck in an argument, she'll call me Space Trader. I want to space trade with aliens. Wow. You know, and I could go on and on with things on how people just misinterpret stuff and that instant judgment. And that goes with a lot of things, in the virtual world or not virtual. So the Arlington County Civic Federation candidate forum was nice. I got to meet the candidates, the other candidates, and we've got Jerry Torres, Republican, David Kennedy, Independent, Bentley Hensel, excuse me, who's independent, and then of course the incumbent Don Beyer. And that was neat to be able to sit there. I was lucky because if you guys have been following what's going on with me, my circumstances with my name appearing on the ballot, you'll know that I got there early and I asked the gentleman that was there, and asked him, explain the gist on how the Virginia Department of Elections is not giving me a 10-day grace after receiving the 340 blank signatures that they recorded as such. You know what I mean? That was from a Freedom of Information Act. And, I know that I missed the 5-day deadline, but through that process, there's 340 blank signatures. They were not blank signatures. The software recorded it that way or something else. I don't know. I'm not into conspiracies and too much, but I mean, that evidence is pretty loud. When there's 340 blank signatures, they've recorded 1,144. My final count was 1,166. And the phone, they told me was 6. Anyways, I'm gonna get off my soapbox about that. So I was lucky to get it for a minute and a half. I was supposed to speak for 2 minutes. And I had planned that maybe if they let me sit up there with the rest of the guys, that I would do the same format, do the introduction, take questions, things like that. So that wasn't the case. So I was like, just the way that I had wrote that introduction fit that platform. So I had to think quickly, and I was like, okay, well, I'll just kind of sum up whatever everyone is saying here, which is pretty much everywhere in politics, maybe not so much in local politics. It depends. Here we've got a lot of money. So to still say that we want a general welfare fiscal responsibility balance is appropriate, right? But that broad scope, I was able to get that out and call out the incumbent, who's very much aristocrat, big money, and it's terrible that it's just something that it's a challenge that I have to go through when it's pushing my platform through and knowing that there's an incumbent here that's like that. And one of my prime tools is social media. But again, I do go the opportunity to be at these kind of forums. So they will speak for a minute and a half. I don't think it was very smooth, but I mean, I still put it out there that the American Anti-Corruption Act, and that's what I talked about at the candidate for Assange thing. Initially, that interview was supposed to be about how technology impacts Amendment 1 and 4. See what's going on with Brazil and the hypocrite Elon Musk when it comes to free speech and all that stuff. And so I was able to put my notes on that post, and that was what this Erwin Rogard, going back, that's what he had read. And even the notes, that's how it is on my phone right now. I'm looking at my phone, it says GCD notes. That said candidate for Sun. Just anyway, I'm glad that I was able to dip that debug. He may even try and push something forward. I even told him, I mean, I know that he was following my page after all that, so he's may or may not watching right now. And if he is, well, bring it on. Just bring it. You know what I mean? If you want to go, if you just you think that there was a person running for the House of Representatives that supported everything that Assange was supported just because he went on a show once that was named that's going to be an op-ed, and you should report me to the judge. Hey, fuck you, man. Seriously, just bring it on. What doesn't matter? I don't care. So, yeah, so the Arlington County Civic Federation, that was nice. It was cool to hear all the candidates for county board. We're a self-governing body here in Arlington. So is Alexandria. So is Falls Church. It's probably, as far as I know, one of the most independently governed places like that. And we still have that check and balance with the state of Virginia and, of course, the federal government. Maybe that has something to do with that. George Washington himself was from, he's originally was in Westmoreland. Westmoreland County, where he lived and died. So it was essentially Mount Vernon, right? Everyone knows it. So I wonder if there's that being the father of a nation, and that's just how it inherits to our ideas and our things, and I'm along with everyone else, and how that's been lost. He was an independent, you know what I mean, but he wasn't the whole concept of what it means to be an independent. You're going to lean a certain way, left or right. I'm doing it leaning left as a vessel to bring ideas together where I can call. That's probably one of the most fundamental things about being an independent is being able to stand up in your own party and then bring those ideas. It's not just about standing up to them and saying that this is right or wrong or whatever. What is the best idea? What are the principles? And then you've got a guy like Kennedy who probably, I can only guess, just my imagination tells me what is it with him and being on this health kick, and geez, I put on social media, is like, is it the reason why he wants people to get vaxxed because of his past heroin addiction? Does he know that he wants to get rid of his illness? The GMOs, they can be beneficial. Some people very well may have, certain susceptibilities to things like that. Some may not. Or celiac, if you eat some wheat and it gives you gas, that doesn't mean you have celiac. So, anyways, I say that from my own experience. So, and just how he goes on and on. So, I mean, that's just a poor candidate. You know what I mean? He wants to call himself independent. He was in the Democratic Party, independent. Now he leans right, even far right, or in some strange way. Things have just gotten pretty interesting when it comes to the candidates, and where you got a guy like Vivek Ramaswamy, who's a libertarian conservative. And I've never once, if you looked at the libertarian platform, they support the decriminalization of prostitution, which to me is pretty much the same as legalizing it. I mean, like if you use it with substances, you decriminalize marijuana. It's not necessarily the same thing when it comes to prostitution. Like with the discrimination, decriminalization when it comes to substances, there's certain things like not being able to grow it or how you obtain it, yada yada. But when it comes to prostitution, how would you even track something like that if you were to decriminalize it, right? So yeah, that's part of the statements and the principles. And that's the thing about it. The Ford Party is not necessarily that way. They don't have any stances on a lot of different things. They called me, and just because Andrew Yang supports UBI, I don't know how it doesn't pan. You know what I mean? What's the incentive to go to work if you have $1,000 fail safe? You know what I mean? A lot more taxpayers. It's not going to work. So, but that doesn't mean that the Ford Party is completely adopted that. I've talked to them about that. So that's kind of one thing the Ford Party is good for is in the 2022 election, they endorsed candidates from both parties. And I looked at which candidates that they endorsed, and they were those that were of constitutional principles. The Republicans would have supported abortion or what have you. So it was cool. And they had a good success rate with who they endorsed. So that's the positive thing about the Ford Party. But they very well may succumb to what all parties do. That was what I started noticing. It's like you have an idea for this to not be a party, but then you start becoming a party. How do you? So that's what I'm talking about when I'm running as an independent leaning left, where and some things are just straight up independent ideas that no one's even thought of. And I'll get to one of those in a minute. Yeah, to be that vessel and just adopt the best ideas and to really look at them. One good thing about the Forward Party, and again, one thing I heard from within the Forward Party is ranked choice voting. I think I caught a few moments of the previous, is it John Langon, Joseph Langon? He was talking about what other options do you have, other than Trump? And he's like really fatigued about it. Well, then that's what ranked choice voting is. Instead of letting the delegates decide who the nominee is going to be, the people will be. So take a look at that. That's all in the American Anti-Corruption Act. That was, again, another thing that I talked about in the Candidates for Assange live stream. It's that they were only focused on one point and how that American Anti-Corruption Act has like four or five different points to it. So if that's ranked choice voting, ending gerrymandering, getting rid of super PACs and lobbyist bundling, then that's it. And they were just fatigued. No one's ever going to pass it. Well, now with that attitude, we were able to debate a little bit on that. It was nice. I didn't know that was the format. If Kelly over there wants to do it again, then let's do that. You're going to have to find, hey, here's an issue. You have 1 minute and then rebuttal. Otherwise, it'll be just a big mess. So I kind of reserved myself from that. or or be creative with it. Like what would the topic be, and then discuss what would the law be. That's most important. If there's rather than just our opinion about something, you know what I mean? Opinion, what's the what they say about opinions, you know what I mean? I mean, if opinion is based on something or fact, that would be in a law, then that's good. But so anyways, I was also able to go to a Hispanic Heritage Festival over here. I saw more candidates. Bentley, I'm sorry, Bentley was not there. Dave Kennedy was there, and I saw Jerry Torres from afar. Recently got onto his website and how he's basically talking about how fossil fuels are going to help everything from socioeconomics and all that. And he's not, people want to know how we are going to transition. How are we going to transition from that? I think again, I heard Joseph talking about that. It's some of the narratives or the fatigue that you're hearing, just the isolating to the ideas of transitioning from fossil. One of the things they came up with is gross domestic product protection act, and there's some paralleling ideas to that when it comes to American Capitalism Protection Act. I'm looking at these two bills just like patents, and I'm looking at the title of it, and I'm like, well, a lot of these ideas are like the same thing, and they're just titled differently. Um, and that's one thing that I didn't like about the Biden administration. The Inflation Reduction Act didn't do that. If it was a patent, it wasn't indicative to the claims. I'll say it again: the price gouging consumer spending is what brought us out of COVID, which is what I mean, that's if you got people staying at home, you got to people chose to do that anyways, to continue to spend that way. And now we're kind of gelling down a little bit, getting back to normal, but prices are high as a result of it. So the only really way to mitigate that, if price controls won't work, I've talked to an economist it was really cool. I went into the festival over the Hispanic Heritage Festival, and I was talking. The first thing I did was go into the Democratic booth and kind of gave them my 2 cents about the incumbent Don Beyer, and then I was like, well, I support Kamala, but what about price controls? So I'm looking around and I can't find any economists that think it's a good idea, because then you're going to have to reduce supply is going to take a hit. So we don't want that. We want a balance. And this economist, whilst it was said the same thing that I keep reading on the internet. It's like, what do we do? It's just there's nothing that you're going to be able. But if we can, with our diverse GDP, if we find something that we can set a certain limit, then let's explore that. Let's get economists to look at it. We're not going to buy them off. Let's get them to look at this mathematically. How does it affect all the systems that are connected to it? And then that would be the principle, right? So, but with the Gross Domestic Product Protection Act, it's my baby, and I'm listening to all the different ideas. And this is what you do: we decouple from China. Everybody wants to bring jobs back. I read an article recently where someone here that lived in Arlington, this is very attractive for a business to outsource an IT department or call something like that, just certain jobs to India or wherever it is, and just so they can make more money. So if we create a Gross Domestic Product Protection Act where that's how we bring up wages, is we want to increase our GDP. That is probably the most pure thing, if that's the right word, pure to use. And that would be output. So if we were to decouple from China incrementally, not just overnight, you know what I mean? Could you, with any change, it doesn't happen. We don't happen overnight, right? So incrementally, as we're doing that, yes, there are incentives to manufacture and things that were in the Inflation Reduction Act, things like that. But to tout it, the way that's what bothered me. One, it didn't do what it said directly, and the way that Biden sold it, that's what upset me too. And it's like, gosh, I wonder if there's people on the right, when they supported Trump and then he went up there and you saw how full of shit he was, you're like, God, do you really? And imagine if you decided to run too, and then you went ahead and started calling them out, and then they just ostracized you. I'm sure Lashane knows what I'm talking about. Yeah. And the Gross Domestic Product Protection Act, we decouple from China, and then we offset the green premium. The green premium is the cost to invest in technology that doesn't emit fossil fuels. We get fossil fuel companies to take that long-term investment. It's still their asset, but they would do it. That is the crux there when it comes to climate change, is the finance. There's a really good book out there by Bill Gates. I'm sure some people are going to hear, as soon as they hear that name, and think about some of the questionable things he did at Microsoft in his personal life. And again, there's no evidence that his acquaintances weren't we're shady. Okay, there's no evidence anyone doing it on any island. Yeah, he was definitely Weasley at Microsoft, but look at what he's doing these days with the Gates Foundation. He is trying to rid the world from malaria and the germ team, which is something that can isolate and mitigates the next pandemic. It's expensive. We have to look at it. But the book that he in question is the How to Avoid a Climate Disaster. Talks about the green premium in there. I came up with offsetting the fossil fuel asset part, where they take the long-term assets. The governor here, Glenn Youngkin, he was a CEO at the Carlyle Group, and they own a lot of, they're one of the largest fossil fuel conglomerates. So to just take that long-term investment, offset that, and bring decouple from China, we're going to have so many jobs, and not just from more advanced technology when it comes to energy or concretes or how we produce food, all kinds of stuff. These patents, this intellectual property has just been sitting there. It's three levers that it talks about in that book I just mentioned. It's technology, finance, and government. Government is only capable of doing anything at 30% because you have, let's say, with the case of energy, you've got oil companies coming in there buying off politicians. And then you've got, on the other side, buying off politicians with other forms of tech. Or if they're too afraid to say advanced nuclear energy, they're going to say solar panels or whatever. And it stalemates like that. You get rid of all that aristocracy, and then the best ideas should be able to flourish. And I hope that people will recognize that, well, how do you take such an idea so serious? You know, how could you, everyone's talking about decoupling from China. We've been talking about that for decades. No one's actually doing it. We need to put a law for it. You know what I mean? Creating incentives for jobs, sure, but that's not going to stop a corporation from exploiting cheap labor somewhere else. I've talked about it before, where HR 7024, it was guised on the left as a child tax credit, where the bill mentioned the special interest for Taiwan 93 times. Okay. So, and then it's really simple with the decoupling from China, offsetting the green premium, and then with all those extra GDP and all the things to build, we can outsource to places like Mexico. We can bring incentives to there, but maintaining that a 70-30 balance. If you're an American-based company, 70% of that has to stay here, 30% of it can go wherever. And that's pretty novel. Imagine if every country in the world did a 70-30, that would be perfect balance, right? So anyways, and then that really just comes down to energy. So if you were to have advanced nuclear, say a place like, I don't know, some Uganda or something like that, just if you had that right there, people would still want to build or create things and just have their own form of economy. And that could be anything. You see how many different types there is of any kind of item, and the different competition, or just however they want to do it. I don't know. I'm not, focused with United States. So I got 6 minutes. That really flew by. I think I covered everything for the most part. I wanted to mention Trump, you know what I mean? That was probably the earliest thing I saw this week, where he said he had every right to subvert the 2020 election without evidence. The guy has called to terminate the Constitution, and people are believing him. And you wonder, like, what are those actual numbers of all the different media outlets actually believe that the election was stolen? Now he wants to amend the 25th Amendment. So if that ever happened to again, he could bypass the vice president, because Pence believed he did what was right. There was no evidence for that. I mean, it's like, wow, why can't you just lose with honor? You know what I mean? If I don't make it with this, I'm not going to be blaming people or anything like that. You may look at my ballot appeal button on my website and thinking, oh, that looks a little, though I'm just presenting the facts. I knew about the 5-day appeal deadline, and I felt discouraged. And then I've just merely 10 working days. I was like, you know what, let's do an appeal. Let's see what would happen. And in the process had started, and that's when I had gotten the records, their electronic record of what they had done, and then discovered all this. And I was like, well, under these circumstances, give me an appeal. And they're not having it. So hopefully that's enough, to, even if my name came on the appeal, if it appeared on the bill, the ballot, it would still be very difficult for people to shake out of their subjective bias when it comes to the incumbent. They just want to play it safe. And thinking, I've talked to people, the fact that he goes back to college, well, during one of the worst Congresses in history, that he's a smart guy for doing that. It's like he knows, like he's just using that as a vehicle, but he doesn't tell us how much time this takes. I went ahead and through a good hypothesis, how long would it take to work on a master's if you were just to take one class a week? And I did crunched out the numbers, and he already has a 30% political efficacy with the aristocracy that we have. Then bring that number down. He's the 13% of his time. So he has a 17% political efficacy. And he's just going to have his staff is going to write whatever he was. I saw him at this forum, like, your staff just wrote that, didn't you? You know what I mean? Like, you can just sit there and talk, you know what I mean, and read something, and maybe you don't fumble, and people are going to believe you. You know what I mean? And it's like, wow, look at this data, look at this information. Like, it's not working. So, yep, those are my major topics. 3 minutes left. Let's see, what can I spitball for 3 minutes? We got the Gross Domestic Product Protection Act. Go to my website, leonforcongress.us. Oh, that video. Well, to be honest, I can only afford to start circulating that until next week anyways. And I've been saying that I was gonna do something on Facebook you can boost a post on Facebook and I would circulate that. And then mail-in ballots start on the 20th. I'm gonna send an email to the other two independent candidates and see if they want to come on the show and get the people here to see that I would offer, if I were to win, I would bring them into staff. And if either one of these two guys would win, do the same thing. Now, it was tricky if you when all three of you want to get the incumbent out of the way and you want to start something new, it's like, how do you maintain interdependent like that? I feel very comfortable talking to Dave Kennedy, and I've talked to Bentley on the phone. You know, for every time him and I talk, it's like an hour and a half. So, and Dave's a really nice, gentle guy. You know, you try to imagine what kind of representative would he be, or Bentley or me. Let's look at the skill sets. His is mostly finance. Bentley is technical software, stuff like that, and I'm intellectual property law. So that is inventions. That's things like that. That's the principle of a new and useful idea, framing it right. Plus, I've got a micro business, and that's the thing about me is that I developed something new, a new asset in my company's portfolio, and then I built something else. The whole company could be built off of some of the things that I've invented, and now I'm doing this, and I've invested into it. So, yeah, and I've got something to fall back on. There's just too much going on. There's too much at stake with climate change and the aristocracy and the foreign matters and media literacy, the political disillusionment, the wages, all this stuff. I figured once I got into this game, I started bringing those solutions, started to, if in a way, being the people's inventor, even if that's broad scope. But if you're full of shit, if you're bullshitting yourself, I can't help you. You're going to have to shake your denial and all this and that. And I've got right on 9:30 right now. I'm just going to go ahead, and we started a minute or so late, but that's okay. So thank you very much and have a good night.